Barely managing to hold on to her bulky bag, April headed for the emergency exit. "Be patient, dear. Just a little bit more and we'll be home," the cleaner whispered and adjusted the hole in the bag designed for ventilation. At that moment, Simon Young was sitting at his computer and watching the footage from the CCTV cameras. The man was making some notes in his notebook, which he started immediately after he got the restaurant from his father. Simon's father used to be a chef in the past, but after several years of hard work, he managed to save up enough money to buy out the empty building of the city cafeteria and have it renovated. At first, people were reluctant to go to Benjamin Young's restaurant. It didn't yet have any regular customers, since it takes years to earn a reputation. But over time, the situation changed for the better, and the restaurant finally started bringing in a steady income. Having become the new owner of the establishment, Simon decided not to change the usual order and introduce any innovations. The only thing he did was install a video surveillance system that could record everything that was happening inside and outside of the building. And now, watching the footage, the man noticed something strange. He saw the cleaning lady, April, trying to carry a very bulky bag out of the restaurant. Simon didn't know what was in it, but he suspected that it was full of products from the kitchen. The man understood that he might not get a better chance to check what was in the young cleaner's bag. Therefore, Simon resolutely got up from the table and hurried to the exit. April stepped outside and breathed a sigh of relief. Another workday was over. Her back was aching from fatigue, and her hands were trembling from the agitation and fear that one day her secret would be revealed. Suddenly, she heard a man address her. "April, wait. Show me what's in your bag." The cleaning lady turned around and saw Simon Young standing in front of her. She knew that he owned the restaurant. "Do we have to do this, sir? There's nothing illegal in the bag." April tried to object. Her vague reply only piqued Michael's interest. "Yes, we do have to do this. Why all the secrets? Why do you need such a big bag?" the owner of the restaurant asked. April immediately realized that Simon suspected her of stealing, but she didn't dare to open the bag. But when Simon repeated his request, the cleaning lady had no choice but to comply. Imagine the man's surprise when he saw a little girl sleeping in the bag, sucking on her thumb and smiling. It was only then that Simon realized that the bag was actually a baby carrier that April, for some inexplicable reason, had brought to work with her. "But why didn't you just tell me about it?" Michael exclaimed in surprise. April lowered her eyes in embarrassment and didn't find the words to respond. She really needed this job, and so she was very afraid that in the event her secret was revealed, she would get fired. Nobody knew April's secret. She had been bringing her 8-month-old daughter, Molly, to work in a special baby carrier for about 3 weeks. Thankfully, April didn't have to do it every day. Sometimes she had a nanny come to her house and babysit Molly. But the nanny could only come in twice a week, and it wasn't cheap. Simon had never felt so stupid in his life. Looking at the confused woman holding a baby in her arms, he felt very bad for her. Simon felt ashamed of the fact that he mistook the unfortunate woman for a thief. But there was nothing in her bag except for the baby and all kinds of supplies for her. "Excuse me, I really didn't know. Let me take you home as an apology. It's getting late and you'll be walking alone and carrying the baby," Simon said, trying to make amends. April's first instinct was to reject the man's offer, but seeing how sincere his concern was, the woman nodded in agreement. She was very tired after the day at work, and all that she wanted was to get home as soon as possible. On their way to April's home, Simon stopped by a supermarket and bought a huge bag of groceries for the cleaner and her baby. Meanwhile, he refrained from asking any uncomfortable questions about April's past. Simon realized that the woman's decision to work as a cleaner spoke of her difficult financial situation. Michael was mostly right in his assumption. April's life really wasn't easy or happy. April's boyfriend broke up with her as soon as she told him that she was pregnant. And the woman's parents died in a car accident 10 years ago, leaving their daughter with only an old house on the outskirts of the city. By an evil twist of fate, it was located in an up-and-coming neighborhood where more and more wealthy people were building their mansions. Construction developers had repeatedly offered April to sell her house and move to another place. But the woman couldn't do it. because that house kept the memories of her deceased parents, and the woman didn't want to leave the place where she spent her childhood. Of course, the problem could be solved by hiring a lawyer. But unfortunately, April couldn't afford one. And how could she? She barely earned enough money to get food. In the meantime, the developers were very rude and arrogant and behaved as if they already owned April's house. At first, they sent April letters with offers to buy out her house. However, since the woman refused to sell, they went ahead and simply wrote "sold" on the woman's front door. They did it with one purpose only: to annoy the woman. A little later, they simply came into April's yard and started measuring the size of her land, talking about the house they were going to build there. April couldn't help but worry that one day they would find a way to simply take away her house and her land. That was why she was so afraid of losing her job and decided to even take her little daughter there with her. To April's delight, Molly was growing up a calm child who barely ever cried. And if she did cry, it was only when she was hungry or needed her diaper changed. Parking his car in front of April's house, Simon noticed a black pickup truck parked nearby. Who could it be? The woman asked in alarm. It was only starting to get dark, so they could see the car clearly. "Well, let's find out who that is," Simon said, and got out of the car. As it turned out a little later, the developers took advantage of April's absence and had come into her yard again. Having noticed a tall man in front of them, the uninvited guests tensed up visibly. They were used to seeing a frightened young woman with a baby, but now things took a completely different turn. "Oh, what are you doing here?" Simon asked instead of a greeting. The construction developers looked at each other, after which one of them said, "We're making preparations, sir. We're planning on building a new house here soon." Simon chuckled and then said, "Get out of here right this second, or you'll regret it. If I ever see you here again, I'll call the police, and your management will have to answer for your behavior in court. Take my word for it, my lawyers will make sure we win this case, and you'll be out of a lot of money." Simon's response finally made the developers lose their ardor. They realized that they needed to change their methods or they would face criminal charges. Having collected their simple inventory, they left April's yard and got into the pickup truck. "Rest assured, they won't be coming back here, at least not in the near future," Simon said with a smile. "Thank you, you're a real lifesaver," April exclaimed with tears glistening in the corners of her eyes. At that moment, April saw Simon as a real knight in shining armor, who protected the beautiful stranger from the lowlives who tried to get their hands on her house. Simon helped April bring in the groceries, then froze in the doorway and said, "You know, if you need to bring your baby to work, you don't have to hide her. The waitstaff can even help you watch her." April was so surprised that she was even afraid to believe her ears. Frankly speaking, she was very tired of shuddering at every rustle and being afraid that someone might uncover her secret. Having returned home, Simon thought about the vicissitudes of fate, which sometimes brought such unexpected surprises. What April had to do made the man feel very sorry for her. He'd never seen anything like that in his life. Unfortunately, young single mothers often shy away from responsibility and choose to leave their kiddos at an orphanage. But April's case turned out to be very different. When the woman came to work the next day, Simon immediately called her into his office, where he announced that she would be promoted to assistant cook. "I think that this position would be a bit easier on you. It will also give you a chance to learn to cook. My chef is a professional. He will be happy to teach you everything he knows." "Thank you, sir," April murmured in astonishment. Michael smiled, then immediately added, "By the way, if it won't make you feel uncomfortable, you could call me by my first name. I'm not that old, and I'm definitely not old enough to be a grandfather." April burst into laughter and nodded in agreement, after which she hurried off to the kitchen. A completely different life awaited her now. Working in the kitchen was very different from the job she had before. The duties of a cleaning lady were incredibly difficult, especially for a single mother living from paycheck to paycheck. Wanting to help April, Simon personally notified all the employees of the restaurant that she had a little daughter. Many of them were truly shocked to learn that the young cleaning lady had been bringing her baby to work and hiding her from them for an entire month. Simon felt a lot of respect for April, whom he saw as a perfect example of selflessness and incredible strength of character. Moreover, the businessman also decided to personally take the woman and her daughter home every evening. It quickly became a kind of ritual for Simon, something he did every day. When the weekend came, the businessman invited April to the movies or organized a trip to the park. They walked around and chatted about everything in the world, laughing merrily and behaving as if they were a real couple. Of course, little Molly couldn't really understand anything yet, and following Michael with her eyes, thought that he was her dad. After that memorable conversation with the owner of the restaurant, the developers left April alone and never came back to her house again. Simon, on the other hand, turned out to be a man of his word and did everything to make April's life easier. The romantic relationship between the two young people resulted from their friendship and mutual sympathy, which they felt from the first day they met. The day Simon proposed to April became the best day in her life since the birth of her daughter. Having agreed to the businessman's proposal, the woman felt a surge of happiness so strong that it filled her heart with love and tenderness. After the wedding, the newlyweds joined forces and worked on developing their restaurant business together. The two of them quickly made significant progress. A year and a half later, April gave birth to a son who brought the couple even closer, making them what felt like the happiest family on the planet. Looking at her little brother, Molly laughed and tried to ask her parents for a sister too, even though it was still hard to understand what she was saying. Simon and April promised to fulfill their daughter's requests in the very near future, because where children's laughter sounds, there is always prosperity, love, and family happiness.